No, 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 no.
Hey everybody, do you recognize that guitar playing? That's our own Michael Lemmo, king of the Jazz Master, and he's playing a 58 Jazz Master right now, one of the very first ones with a gold anodized pickguard, and that's always been Michael's guitar of choice.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about Michael's upbringing and what got him into guitar and all kinds of stuff like that. And we just like to have fun here. We've got a few real professionals in the room. We've got a few guys from the show The Neighborhood. We've got my buddy Max Greenfield, we've got Gordy, and we've got Ron from the show. And they wanted to just see how it's not done. So we figured we'd show them this is why you guys are pros and we're not. But we want to welcome you guys to Norm's Rare Guitars podcast. You know, we always have a lot of fun here. And so Michael, we hired Michael how long ago? How long have you been working for us?
I was just thinking about that today. It's been about 2 years, maybe?
Okay.
Year and a half, 2 years?
And you're not sick of it yet, right?
No way. Every day there's something new. And also, I think since I've been working here, my guitar playing has expanded because I see so many different players every day. And also it's taught me how to talk because I'm in front of a camera every day. And I think I always could play guitar, but the hardest part for me was the other part, being a performer and kind of
an on-stage personality.
Showing off is not my favorite thing to do. But part of it, you have to show them what you got, so.
Well, I've talked about this before, but my son Jordan actually was in the store, and Michael first came in and he was playing, and I was in my office doing something, I'm not sure what, but Jordan came in and he says, "Hey, you got to come check this guy out."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I'll be out in a few minutes." And then Jordan said, "No, I mean, you got to come out now." And so
that was a whole series of events because I was, kind of finding my way. I moved out to LA kind of pretty in a raw fashion, not many leads, but I had a few. And my friend Noah at the time, who I met through this photographer, Robert Knight, who shot Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, he had this thing called the Brotherhood of Guitar, and he put together all these young guitar players. And it was like, the first batch was like 10 kids. And it was like me and like Brad Whitford's kids from Aerosmith.
Really? Yeah.
And
I know Brad, and I know his son.
Tyler Bryant was the leading kid
really?
that he found. Yeah, he had this documentary on. And my dad's like, "There's a kid." I was downstairs in Pennsylvania. He's like, "There's a kid on TV just like you." And it was Robert Knight's documentary. And he was all talking about finding the guitar players. And so I emailed him that night, and he got right back to me. And
That's cool.
And then that's how I met Noah. And Noah, when I got out here, he was the only kid in the group that sang and wrote songs. And I was like, all right, everybody can shred, but I'm interested in the kid who can write songs. And he brought me to Norm's. He said, "You got to go to Norm's." He's like, I said, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" He's like, "Just play. Just play and they'll come up to you." And it's funny. So I was sitting there.
Right.
Yeah, so it's funny. So full circle, I was sitting there and he's like, "Just go." I'm like, I don't know. Coming back to not liking to show off. I didn't want to, but I was just like, just do whatever. And sure enough, Jordan came right up to me. And I remember you coming up right after. And then before we knew it, I think we were doing the famous videos. And it was just an amazing thing. It changed my life immediately because all of a sudden I remember people reaching out right away. And actually, from the first time we did a video, I ended up in Warner Brothers Records with Julian
Raymond.
Julian Raymond, yeah. So that was, in terms of music business, that was one of the closest I got to getting signed by a major. Of course, the record industry is what it is. He was let go or left within
He
a
moved
month.
to Nashville.
Yeah, now he's at Big Machine Records, which is funny because he hired me this year.
And that was with Django Stewart, right?
Yeah, Dave Stewart's son from the Eurythmics. And I think for me, I've had a lot of really cool opportunities, but I always get really close, and I'm like, if the music's not there, I don't care about the other stuff. And there was a lot of situations where I got into some cool stuff, but I always kind of back out because I'm like, the music doesn't feel right. But that was a really good experience to go down to Nashville and record with Django. His dad is amazing. You know, obviously did all the synth work and all the music on the Eurythmics, which, it's funny, I still say, what's the main hit? Sweet Dreams is probably the most played song I ever hear on every radio, and he was just the coolest guy, so I did that, and did a lot of playing around town, but it was funny about how I got here.
Well, and Jordan and I were at a sushi restaurant, and we're hearing these guys from this other record company talking, and they're saying, you know, this one artist, Alan Raymond, needs a guitar player. And we were just eating, and we're sitting right next to him, and Jordan leaned over and said, I think I got your guy. And they're going, excuse me? He said, well, we work over at Norm's, and, you know, we hear a lot of great guitar players. We got your guy. And he said, oh, really? And
yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. An artist could only be so lucky to have a person like Jordan who's not... You know, he didn't have an official position of managing or anything, but he was certainly doing a good job.
Well, he was aggressive enough. I mean, those guys, persistent. You know, when he leaned over and said that to them, they were going, you know, he didn't realize that he had heard what they were saying. You know,
yeah, that's right. And I remember he came back from lunch. He's like, we just got sushi and you got a gig.
Yeah, so he ended up going out on the road with Alan. Yeah, so it was very cool.
Right after, my first gig with Alan was Red Rocks, and it was 10,000 people. And it's funny because they said when they watched the footage back, I never seen it, but like, you know, I probably before that I used to playing in front of less than 100 people. So, you know, I go up and they said I'd be like this, and I'd pick my head up and I'd be like, wow. Every time, you know, the footage is just me freaking out.
You got to pretend like you're in your living room or something, well, so you don't get too intimidated.
It's funny because people kept asking me what did it feel like, and on a daily basis I feel... Not at Norm's, just in general, very out of place in terms of just having a hard time finding my comfort zone, and that was the most comfortable I've ever felt. And it was 10,000 people. I think I looked up just because I was so excited, but I really, that experience was one of the most memorable I've ever had. And then after that, we went to Europe, and we went all over Germany. We went to Berlin, Hamburg, Cologne, and then we went to Switzerland. We went to all over, and it was funny. I'd stop at, I think it was the first spot was Norway. And then one of my favorite stories is I turned the corner, and the guy goes, whoa, Michael Lemmo. And I'm like, oh, cool, you're here to see Alan Raymond. He's like, who's Alan Raymond? And I'm like, what? He's like, and my point is just the reach that I've gotten from Norman's Rare Guitars has been unmatched. And it's crazy that all over the world, and then even in Oslo, I went to a guitar store, and they're kind of looking at me, and I had only been working at Norm's for not even a year at this point. And they're looking at me, and they're like, wait a second, are you the Lemmo demo? And they gave me a bunch of free stuff, and, you know, and
where's my commission? I don't know. I missed that one.
Yeah, you did miss that one. Well, actually, he bought a few guitars from you. He was definitely a victim.
Oh, all right. That's what we call some of our customers. Like my buddy Max Greenfield over here. He's a victim and a friend and a customer.
Yeah, so, big victim.
But anyhow, you know, what I kind of saw in Michael, which I really dug, was Michael's playing. He's so rhythmic, and he does so many things that are different from everybody else, you know, when he's playing. You know, a lot of guitar players can either blaze, you know, like fast solos or whatever, but Michael kind of combines that, the rhythm and the solos together, and that's kind of what we recognized in him that was so different. And doing a lot of this stuff, you know, a lot of people talk about sustain and hitting long notes and things like that, but, you know, equally important is playing some of those short notes, and with the staccato and the muted sound, do a little of that kind of stuff, something real rhythmic that's kind of got, you know, that kind of staccato stuff happening.
So you're talking about the pull-off thing?
Yeah, you know, the stuff with kind of the muted notes, like the rhythmic thing.
So you can kind of do it different patterns, but check it out. And I like to do a lot of stuff like this too, like if you had chords in the background, so stuff like
Yeah, that kind of stuff. I call it kind of tick-tock guitar playing. It kind of sounds like a clock or something, but it's really cool.
Yeah, we use it a lot, and one of the other great players at doing that is Henny Hendrix.
Oh yeah, he's terrific.
And one of the reasons why I feel like when we jam it works so well, because he's kind of got that rhythm too.
Uh-huh.
And but yeah, it's all about that and the melodies for me.
Well, like when Hendrix played like tunes like "Wait Until Tomorrow" and things like that,
Yeah.
there was a combination of this rhythmic thing happening with solos, and
Yeah,
that's
it's kind
what
of
made
a
it so
constant
special.
thing. It's funny because I went to Berkeley and they always told me not to use my thumb, but that's kind of what opens that up for me. And even Hendrix was known for doing that. So you can kind of play, you just keep strumming and you just pick them out. Really, a lot of muting with your left hand. So let's say you're just strumming all the way. So you're like,
Yeah.
And then you can just keep going, But yeah, just different techniques I've been working on. But I always love filling space. Like my uncle always would tell me about my guitar playing. He's like, one thing you definitely do is fill a lot of space. And I think like Steve Ray Vaughan and Eddie Van Halen and Jimi Hendrix, a lot of times they were the only guitar player in the band, and that's a lot of responsibility. And I always wanted to kind of keep that principle.
Well, they can fill space, and you can fill space, but also we're leaving some space open, which
Yeah,
I think
but
is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of it, too, is knowing the dynamics of when to stop and start, and that's all stuff I've been working on my whole life,
So, I want to talk about your upbringing and all that. I mean, your uncle's a jazz saxophone player,
Yeah, my
right?
Uncle Bob, him and my father were always into music, and my father actually wanted to play guitar his whole life. He didn't because he was left-handed, and at the time in Philadelphia it was kind
That
of
was my problem too.
yeah, but I don't think it's a good enough excuse I gotta call him out on that one. He should have went for it, but I think all that angst maybe went into me, and but my uncle plays jazz saxophone, but they were they always, like, actually my dad educated me a lot on my tone and how to use Marshalls, because another thing too is using a Marshall versus a Fender is a whole nother art, and it's because it's constantly screaming at you, and so you have to have hand control and stuff. And my dad, for not playing guitar, really taught me a lot about, well, he had a background in engineering, and so he knew how, he was always into trains and things that
Well, he had a good ear apparently.
yeah,
if
and
he knew.
building stuff, and so he really helped me out there a lot too, and they both pushed me along with my musical influences.
When did you get your first guitar, and what was it?
First guitar really, technically, was just a little nylon string. But I would say my first really official was when I was 11, and I got just a black, looked like Blackie Fender Squire, and
That's what a lot of people start on.
yeah,
Great
it had the
beginner
maple
guitar.
neck. It was so great. I got it at Sam Ash in Philadelphia in Franklin Mills, and it was the 4th of July weekend. Because I remember I was looking at them, and it was, I'll say one thing, though, about it. My whole life, one of my earliest memories is always asking my mom about guitar, and asking, way before that. And I remember even, she had a guitar from her father, and I used to just sit out on the front porch, and this is one of my earliest memories. I used to just do, because I couldn't press the frets down, so I just do different patterns of the open strings like that.
Uh-huh.
And so I was always obsessed with guitar, and even there's pictures every birthday, it goes from buttons to real strings,
Uh-huh.
But the Squire was my first, and after 11, it was no looking back. It was never looking back.
When I was a kid and when I was younger, there were no Squire guitars. So there were, K's and Silvertones and, things like that.
Which now have some value.
Well, they have some value, but they really have to be set up properly if you're
They
ever
do,
going to
yeah.
learn on them, because it was a struggle for most kids, because a lot of people didn't even know what a guitar was supposed to feel like, you
Yeah.
know. And so if the action was real high, they thought, well, that's just the way it is, and you got to kind of learn to do what you do, you know. Later on, you know, with these other guitars that were so much more playable with low action, you could actually do a lot of things playing up and down the neck. And
I love Squire. I always said
yeah.
if I had if I was ever lucky enough to have a model, I would just do Squires because I think it's great. That's the best time to influence people. You know, there's when
Yeah.
they're right when they're picking it up, and so I think Squires are. I love them. I just think it's a really cool thing.
Well, I'll tell you, I was on a Joe Bonamassa blues cruise, and I was really tired. I had seen a lot of music all day, and I was just heading back to my room, and I stopped by this one little bar in the on the ship, and all these people were there, and this guy was absolutely killing, and it was Jack Pearson. And Jack was just great singer and unbelievable guitar player. You know, he was very well known to a lot of people, but I wasn't aware of him. And I said, "Who the hell is this guy?" And I was just somebody that looked familiar on the ship. And they said, "Well, that's Jack Pearson." And I said, "Wow, he's great." And they said, "Yeah, you know what he's playing?" I said, "Yeah, it's a Stratocaster." They said, "Take a good look." They said, "That's a Squire."
Oh,
And
yeah.
he was getting an unbelievable sound out of it. And, you know, it just goes to show you it's 95% player. It's nice having good tools, but he really made the thing sound unbelievable.
Yeah, some of the Squires have a certain twang to them, and I always say like my main guitar. People are always asking what year my Jazzmaster is. I'm pretty sure it's like a 2012. You know, it's just about finding that right instrument for yourself. That's a tough one, but if you do find the right one, it will take you to the next level. So it's definitely important.
Well, Jack, I know, was, you know, did a lot of work with the Allman Brothers, you know, later
Yeah,
Allman
wow.
Brothers, and he's, you know, just one of those guys in Nashville that he's renowned there. But he's somebody that I wasn't aware of, and when I heard him, he just kind of stopped me in my tracks.
I remember you talking about him when you came back.
Just
Yeah.
amazing player, and really, you know, unassuming kind of guy. Great singer too, and you know, I was really impressed. And but later on, you actually went to Berkeley, right?
Yeah, so when I was probably 15 was the first time I showed up at Berkeley, and I remember you had to be 16 to go to the week program. And that was when the relationship started. My father sent them a bunch of CDs and was like, "Look, I know he's 15, but will you take him now for the week program?" And they wrote back and were like, "Yeah." And and I think I got a scholarship to the week program that time. And then I went to a summer program called the 5-week program, which is something I suggest to all guitar players or musicians. That was probably the best thing I did at Berkeley. Especially you get to skip the cold. It's a summer program, so that's a nice
There
thing.
you go. And also, Tomo was your
Yeah,
teacher,
yeah.
right?
So what happened was at the 5-week program, it was funny. I remember a guy telling me on the curb, "Don't bother auditioning, you know, for scholarships. You know, it's just impossible." And at the summer program, I auditioned for the full scholarship, or for scholarship for the full-on program to go to school there. And at the end of the program, they would announce, you know, by increments of the money. So like 10 grand, you know, and so the last is, you know, so I'm holding on to the very end, and I thought I did well because they clapped at the audition I did. And all of a sudden they keep calling off money, and I'm like, oh boy, until the very last they call out the full scholarship, and I got one. And
Pretty cool.
pretty wild because I can't read a note. And and
Well-
it's kind of a myth about Berkeley, but it just goes to show you, you know, don't let anybody tell you because you might have a shot. You never
Well,
know.
like when they tell you don't use your thumb or don't
Yeah,
do-
yeah, just go
rules
for
are
it.
meant to be broken, and
Yeah.
you know, I mean, people break them, and that's how new innovation comes
Yeah.
about. You know,
So then when I went there, I met Tomo, and Tomo obviously was known for
he's John Mayer's.
Yeah, he's known for
teacher.
teaching John Mayer, and but Tomo really taught me a lot of stuff outside of the guitar, and he was actually the one who suggested to leave Berkeley, and I was already having a tough time, but he felt like I could do my own thing, so that's when I came out here. So Tomo was a big part of me moving out to California.
And your idols, one of your biggest idols was Eddie Van Halen, right?
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen. So I used to cry about Eddie Van Halen when I was a little kid. I was like, there's not enough. There's Zeppelin posters, there's Beatles posters, but I'm not finding Van Halen. And then I was just always obsessed, and I remember when I was little, the CD changer, I was going back because it was like Clapton or Jimi Hendrix, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden the CD flipped, and it was Van Halen Greatest Hits with the gold, and Eruption was the first thing to come on. I'm like, those guys sound like they're sleeping compared to him, in my opinion, at the time. And lucky enough, when I was 14 years old, freshman year of high school, he started dating my friend's mom, and I went over to his house, and I hung out with Eddie Van Halen for 2 hours, and he was so nice to me, and just the coolest. It was one of those things, to be honest. My dad calls it the Twilight Zone, but it was one of those things that actually made me believe in things because it was so out there. And he's from Holland overseas, and where I lived was Holland, Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Ooh, it sounds like the Twilight Zone.
It is pretty weird, and just a meeting of the minds there, and so.
So was he encouraging to you as a young man?
Very, very encouraging. Which is funny because Eddie, he's got a rough past sometimes, when he drinks and stuff. But in terms of one thing I really noticed about him when I met him, he was like a kid. There was people in a good way, like in terms of he never grew up. He's a guitar player. So when people his own age came over, like, hey, Ed, I remember seeing you in '80s. Like, yeah, whatever. But when it came up to me and he could see my drive towards the instrument, he just wanted to help it blossom, it felt like. So it was cool.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, when you meet a lot of people when they meet their idol, sometimes they're very disappointed.
Yeah, I've met some people that have been, and I get it. I mean, look, one thing I always have to remind myself is you never know what that person's going through, even no matter what they do for a living, so, but yeah, I do think it's, if you can put on your happy face, it helps the young ones a lot, so.
All right. Well, you're doing that right now at Norm's Rare Guitars. I appreciate your enthusiasm and, being our Guitar of the Day host.
I appreciate you, Norm. You changed my life, and, I was about to, like I've said before, I was almost going to go home to Philadelphia, and, when things were getting tough, but Norm helped me, and...
No, I said, don't go home, man.
Come
work for
crazy.
me. I mean, I knew that, if he worked for the store and he got some exposure, that people were going to go crazy for him. And people really love him. And he's, Michael's really a good kid and really, polite, really nice young man. And, that is really nice to see when you hear somebody who can play a lot and, they're not full of themselves. And so you're humble. And
well, my mom said last time I was home... And it stuck with me. It even stung. She's like, "There's always someone better," and and I think even in music, it's not even about that. I think if you find your own voice, you're not competing with anybody.
Yeah, there's no such thing as better because it's apples and oranges.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You get to a certain level of good, and then it's like for what you do, you're the best at what you do. Joe Bonamassa's the best at what he does. Eddie Van Halen's the best at what he does. Wes Montgomery's the best at what he does.
Yeah, exactly.
So, they're all, you can learn from every one of them. And then everybody kind of assimilates all these styles, puts them together, and then creates their own style.
Yeah, that's the number one advice I always give out when people ask. I say, listen and play everything because there's such a big ocean out there. If you want to create your own sound, you better take a lot of ingredients and mix them up.
Yeah, make your own stew.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is it about the Jazz Master that does? What inspired you first to pick up a Jazz Master?
It's funny. I was first inspired by the Jazz Master when I was 14 years old, and it was actually in like Pennsylvania and the tri-state area. A lot of big scene was emo music, which is kind of like bands like Taking Back Sunday and stuff, and they started coming. I always saw the Jazz Master in alternative music, whether it was emo or indie and so that was my first exposure to it. And I'm like, that's different, and so I remember talking to my dad, same place I got my first guitar. I'm like, we go back to Sam Ash, and I'm like 14 years old now. I'm like, I think I kind of want that guitar, but I was afraid of it because I'm like, I don't know anybody who plays it as much, just other than friends, and it had different switches on it. And then when I moved out to LA, I was 21 years old, and in 2012, I saw Radiohead for the first time. And I already had this interest going up to the show, but I saw them in Santa Barbara, and they came out, and they were playing this record called King of Limbs. And Tom York and I think it was Ed O'Brien, they both had white Jazz Masters, and they sounded like a UFO, and they looked like a UFO. And I was like, these guitars, this is the new thing. And I always played Strats, but I always would do what I call it was really famous at Berkeley, and we see it at the shop too. It's not a bad thing, but the Stevie Ray Vaughan-itis kind of thing, where you're just like, you just go do all of his licks, and that Strat kept making me do that. And so yeah, after seeing Radiohead in 2012, I got home, and actually cool enough too, it was one of the last guitars I went shopping out with my father too, and he was there, and yeah, I had to get a Jazzmaster, and then I never looked back. First thing I did was I changed the bridge to a Mastery bridge, and the rest was history.
That's one of the things about Jazzmasters is that the bridge, the strings can pop out of the bridge.
They can, yeah.
It's inherent in the design of the guitar, but so this Mastery doesn't affect the originality of the guitar, but it's a way to kind of create more tension so the strings lock into the bridge a little better.
Yeah, and I think too that the Jazzmaster kind of had a resurgence, I think, in the 2000s because alternative music became so big, because rock and roll, there was so much of it already done, and so people are looking for ways to think outside of the box. And I think that, so the Jazzmaster, there's been more research done into it the second time around, and people were figuring out the bridge is kind of having some trouble and stuff. But I'll tell you, when you switch that bridge, I can literally hold my Jazzmaster by the bar, pick it up again, and it's in tune, and you can really beat them up. And also, the toggle switches started making changes for me. Like you can do like kind of kill switch stuff where you're like, that kind of stuff, and then the bells. But it was just, the main thing for me was it made me think differently. I didn't think to like, oh, I know this guy. I mean, the only guy I could really think of right away was Elvis Costello.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that, Elvis Costello kind of brought the Jazzmaster back into prominence, where a lot of people were seeing a rock guy, a pop guy playing, a Jazzmaster, because, they were kind of asleep for a while.
Yeah, it's really a guitar that was asleep, and I think, like I said, if you go to like East LA or if you go to Brooklyn, where a lot of these bands are breaking, especially in indie and alternative music, it's offsets, man. There's a lot of offsets and you can't
Wilco,
say Wilco, Nels Cline, but the king of the offsets in a lot of ways for pre-2000s is Kurt Cobain. It kind of set up a precedent of, it's exactly what the name sounds like to me. It's just a little offset. It's like, and I think in rock and roll music things had to be a little offset because so much has been done. It's been going on since the 50s, and so it's just something for inspiration.
Well, if everybody used the exact same guitar and the same amp, everybody would have the same sound. So it's kind of cool that, that opened up to a different thing. Like there was a period where Gretsch guitars were sort of dead in the water. Nobody really wanted them. And then Brian Setzer started playing Gretsch guitars, and it showed people what those guitars are capable of doing.
Exactly.
And it was a whole different thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you ask Brian, couldn't do that on a Strat and stuff. And the tone, I even saw actually Django's brother, first time I saw a Gretsch, he was playing like that greenish color one. And it was just such a unique playing, such a big sound. And you're right. It's like, man, if he didn't have that guitar's part of what makes him so unique. And so, yeah, and another thing, too, is the tremolo system is unmatched to me. Strats sometimes can be a little stiff. And they'll go out of tune sometimes on me where, because like loving Eddie Van Halen, he would always have the Floyd Rose setup. But I couldn't stand that because it's just, you got to unscrew them, you got to untune them. But this bar is...
Well, it's a longer bar for one thing, so it actually,
and you can keep your hand on it while you pick, so you can do like wave chords, But obviously, meant for jazz and became a surf thing where you get that really great tremolo sound. But yeah, it just changed my perspective, and it was funny because I always try to go back to other guitars, and obviously I'm very spoiled on Guitar of the Day, but I've really learned that the Jazzmaster has become my guitar. So
That's your signature.
yeah, it's my thing.
Well, again, a lot of the surf music, was Jazzmasters and Jaguars, and the Jaguar doesn't really sustain as much as the Jazzmaster, in my opinion. And a lot of people say, what's the difference between a Jazzmaster and a Jaguar? And they're both kind of those offset bodies. But the Jaguar is a shorter scale length and a little different pickup.
It's got those claw pickups.
Yeah, and they really are meant for not having a lot of sustain. You can get sustain out of them, but it's kind of it's a different sound.
Yeah, and like I said before, I've been really practicing on being the only guitar player in my band, and I thought that the Jazzmaster, even compared to the Strat and the Jaguar, has a little bit of a lower frequency that I found. That filled up space, So I just thought it had a big sound. It's a bigger guitar. I'm 6'4". I'm a pretty big guy, so sometimes I play a Strat and I feel like it feels like a fiddle. So I got to be careful.
Well, yeah, and it's cool that you have your own different voice happening.
Yeah.
There, so that you can relate to stuff, and you play Strats and you play other stuff
love
as
them all,
well.
yeah.
And
I love Gibsons too.
That's why people collect guitars, and that's why when people say, "Well, I got 20 guitars," is too many guitars, and I go, you know what I call that? I call that a good start.
Yeah.
Because it's like having a bunch of different paintbrushes if you're a painter, and some you need the thin stroke, some you need the thick stroke, and
I'll tell you,
everything
in the
does
studio,
something else.
Yeah, especially in the studio, I use a lot of different guitars. I mean, the last time I recorded, I used just my Jazzmaster, but you've been nice enough to lend me some stuff. I've used cornets, I've used Gibson hollow bodies.
Epiphone cornet.
Yeah, Epiphone.
It's like the SG equivalent.
Great guitar.
Epiphone.
I'll tell you, if you want to record and get an organic tone, Epiphone cornets, straight to the amp.
Epiphones are very much a sleeper. A lot of people don't realize that before 1970, the Epiphone guitars, at first they were their own separate company, and then Gibson acquired them, and they were kind of a subsidiary of Gibson, but they were made in the States, and they were every bit as good as a Gibson, but just
Gibson
had
P90.
slight differences. Yeah. And so a lot of people, when they hear the name Epiphone, they go, well, it's a Korean or Japanese or Chinese guitar or Indonesian. But no, not really. There's some unbelievable Epiphones, and, it's always refreshing to me when somebody comes in and they ask for some of the cool old Epiphones. Like
yeah, me too.
The Epiphone Texans and the Epiphone Frontiers.
One of my favorites was the Crestwood.
Crestwood's
a little
great
bit more valuable, but those circle kind of inlays, oval inlays, are that guitar looks like it's.
Well, then the 6 on the side, like a Fender headstock on some of them. The early ones are three on the side.
And then the one with the Silver Fox is that green is just one
it's
of the
kind
coolest
of a
colors.
Green gray kind of color.
Yeah.
And then there's the Casinos, Rivieras, and Sheridans, which
all
are
beautiful
really
guitars.
Cool. Those were like the 335 type, 330, 335, 355 equivalents. The Epiphones didn't have stereo.
Right.
But the 345s and 355s.
Yeah.
No, a lot of people don't really like to
some
have to
people
use
are
a stereo
converting them,
chord.
But all those guitars right there are perfect examples. Like I found my Jazzmaster. Those are all guitars that have so much to be discovered about them, I still feel, and that's why the opportunity is. That's what my point is. It doesn't have to be a Jazzmaster, but it has to go for a guitar that you can find your own voice on. And those old Epiphones, I see so much opportunity there. It's insane.
There are a lot of Gibson and Epiphone acoustics, like the J45 and the J50 were the same guitar. The only difference was the J50 was a natural finish, the J45 was sunburst. The Country Western was natural finish, and the Southern Jumbo, which again, it was the same guitar, the Southern Jumbo was sunburst. So an Epiphone had like all these other kind of things that were just different. The scale length on some of the Epiphone guitars are different than the Gibson scale length.
Exactly, yeah.
So there's like slight differences, and the scale length can make a difference in the sound.
Yeah, and even the cornet body was, I think, the closest they've gotten to like a Strat feel almost. And I always thought that the Strat was such a comfortable body. I think that's why a lot of guitar players go towards it. But if you look at it, it's just like a Strat body almost, and then it's got the one P90 in the back. I mean, sometimes you can get two, but it's an amazing guitar. It's definitely something to work with.
Well, again, it's finding your own voice, and again, talking about the scale length, Martin has this thing where it's a triple O or an OM, and the difference being is the scale length. They're pretty much the same body, but the scale length is different. And the longer scale length has a little poppier, like a little snappier type sound, sometimes creates more volume. So all these things kind of play into what the guitar sounds like and what is the sound that you're aiming for. Because everybody's got like a sound in their head, and they've got to kind of determine if that's their sound. So, finding the right guitar for you as your main guitar, and then having other guitars, because, when you go in the studio, it's really cool when you layer
that's
different
another thing
guitars.
I love to do. On Guitar of the Day, I often use, for better or worse, a looper. And, I think one of the biggest arts in the studio is learning how to pair up different guitars. And yeah, I mean, like you said, a Gretsch, I mean, that's where you find out these guitars do different things. I mean, you layer Gretsch down on even like a kind of a baritone line, or if you're just going like, and you put that layer on and you're just like, that's why they did it.
Well, Dwayne Eddy used the Gretsch back in the early days,
Big
and he went to a Guild Dwayne Eddy model, which was really cool. And he did a lot of stuff that played off that open E string.
Yeah, he'd do kind of like that. Just like this big sounds, but man, you could tell it's huge sounding.
And a lot of open strings. So created a
and good
very
beats
big
too.
thing. Yeah. So again, it's just guitar history, and all you guys, if you're listening to this, you're probably guitar lovers. So I know this is probably geeky for some of you people, but talking about the differences in some of the guitars. But so you have a band called Lemmo.
Yes, I do.
How did you find that name?
Actually, it should just stop there. But there is this little story. I actually had a singer who was, and he was like, "Well, you're writing all the songs, but you don't sing. We should call Lemmo." And I was like, "All right." I actually was uncomfortable with it at first. I was like, "I don't know about that." And then it never changed. And then people just called me Lemmo. And actually, I moved out here with the band. That band at the time actually has split at the in the past, but I have a new group together. It's been about 2.5 years since my last show at the Troubadour. I just needed a break, and it wasn't not like anything wasn't going right. I just, it's tough. Yeah, I know you've pursued music. As we've always said, it
can be very disappointing.
It can be very disappointing and very trying. And for me, it wasn't the playing that was the problem. It was just finding my voice and being in my own skin, and I feel like working at Norm's has helped me do that, so it's time to play again. So yeah, Lemmo is still going and back on, and that's one of my biggest passions. I love songwriting. I love, because it ultimately comes down to the song. So yeah, we're going to have some fun with that.
Well, like, for instance, the Jeff Beck group, Jeff wasn't the singer. It was Rod Stewart back in the day, like on the Truth album and all that. So it was kind of unusual because people who didn't know in the very beginning thought Jeff Beck was the singer, but he wasn't. And
then I realized, obviously, the parallels with Van Halen. The band was his last name, and he didn't sing a note. He wasn't
the singer either.
Yeah.
So there you go.
But yeah, so I'm just gonna go for that, and I got a new following that I've never had before, and I can't say enough how much in this business, how important it is for somebody to help you and give you a nod. It's funny, like I've been playing this way for a long time, but since Norm and the rest of the staff and everybody's given me an opportunity to actually step on a stage where people can notice, it has changed everything. So I can't say enough about, it's hard to do it alone, man. You need help, and you need people to. So it's funny. Now that I have the stage, things are kind of working. So I appreciate that.
I mean, it's giving you the confidence to speak and do all the other things, and to be the personality that you are now. And, people like it. People like to know who you are, and that's why we wanted to do this. And we've been doing these podcasts for a little while now, and people are going, "What about Lemmo? What about Lemmo?" So I figured I'd give you like a solo one here.
Well, I appreciate it, and I love them. They're amazing.
Talk about
feels like family. I've had my Uncle Bob, my Aunt Janet, my father Mark, my sister Ann. I got my brother Tom and my mother
What about
Christine.
your mom?
My mother Christine. I was just going to say. Because Tom and Christine have not been on the Guitar of the Day yet. But my point was that even the fans know them. It's so funny when people come up to me and they're like, "Yo, how's Uncle Bob?" I'm like, what the hell is going on?
How'd you know Uncle Bob?
Yeah, but it feels like family now, and another thing, one of the hardest things about pursuing music is traveling and being away from your family, and I feel like I've got a new family here, so it's been
Absolutely.
amazing.
We all love you, and one thing, Michael's from Philly, and
So is
Philly
Norm.
and Atlanta, I am too. And one thing that's kind of cool is Michael was back, and he went to Atlantic City, and there's the White House Subs.
Some of the best
and
ever.
that's like the most famous sub shop in the world.
Yeah, it's great. It's
And,
another one of those mom and pop shops that's been doing it forever, and they're pretty jaded, and rightfully so. They got the best sandwiches. So my dad goes up to them. He's like, "Hey, can we get some shirts?" "No, we don't have them." "Well, it's for Norman's Rare Guitars." "All right, we got them." And so it's really cool that they supported us, and they got a really cool picture when you walk in there. It's like one of the only pictures, and it's the Beatles holding a huge sub.
There you go.
And it's all four of them holding it, and it's the Beatles have been there, and it's just a really great tradition in Atlantic City. And also, people always think about the Philly cheesesteak, but you got to go to Jersey.
Well, when I was a kid, I lived part-time. I was born in Philly, but we had a place in Atlantic City. And Atlantic
Ventnor
City,
Ave, right?
That's right. Atlantic City was known for the diving horse at the Steel Pier. They used to make this poor horse go
wild.
all the way up these stairs to the very top, and there was no backing down. The horse had no choice but to jump off with a rider, and it was a long way down into this swimming pool thing.
Jeez.
And it was a little heartbreaking to watch the horse, but there was no. He couldn't walk down the stairs. Once he got up there, he was screwed.
Well, outside of Vegas, you got Atlantic City.
Yeah, that
it's a
stopped.
pretty
I guess the
wild
animal
place.
rights people put a stop to that. There was the White House Subs. There was Mr. Peanut, which was another thing.
Casinos are a big thing, obviously.
Now they are.
Yeah.
So Atlantic
Lucy
City
the
was,
Elephant and Margate. All
yeah,
cool stuff.
that's right. So, all these things from back home, they bring back memories. And, it's nice to have Michael and my friend Rick Vito is from Philly.
Yep, Rick,
Frank
one of the best.
Stallone is from Philly. And,
Yep.
we talk Philly when these guys are around. And,
Or as Frank would say, Philly.
Philly, because, the guys from Philly, they can't pronounce
We can't
an
do
L.
our L's.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It becomes a W, Philly. When you started doing the Guitar of the Day at Norm's Rare Guitars, you got a call, and I know Jen picked up the phone and said, "Michael, you got a phone call," and who was it?
It was Slash. Only at Norman's Rare Guitars, yeah. So I was freaking out. It was my first episode of Guitar of the Day. Mark Agnesi obviously did a great job and had a tremendous following, and I step in. And it's never easy following somebody, being the next act up, but I did a Fender Bass 6 custom shop. Probably the most odd guitar for Slash to ever be interested in. But it's tuned E to E. You can play it regular. And, Jen gets a call. She goes, okay, yeah, so you want it? Okay. Mike, Slash is on the phone. And then so he comes by.
Yeah, I looked at your face, and it was like you were like...
I was confused.
Yes, you thought we were playing a joke on it.
Yeah, I really did, because if you watch that first episode, I'm like a robot anyway. I'm so nervous, and that was, first of all, I mean, obviously he liked the guitar, he bought the guitar, but very nice of him too, because it really helped cool down my nerves, and I remember...
Boosted your confidence.
Yeah, of course, and one of the things I remember him saying was it was a smooth transition, and it seemed genuine when he said it, and I'm like, well, he's here right now, so it must be, and that was definitely one of those moments where you go, this is, first of all, I'm in LA, second of all, I'm at Norman's Rare Guitars, so this is a unique situation, so very cool.
Well, what always kind of surprises me is I was talking on the phone, and I was talking with Billy Gibbons, and Billy said, "I watch your videos."
Yeah.
And I was like, "You watch our videos?" And he said, "Yeah." So, I mean, and I've heard that from so many people.
Lenny Kravitz?
Yeah, Lenny. I mean, it's just a surprise when they say something like that, because, these are people that you don't think would have the time to even bother or mess with our little stuff that we do, but it's always a surprise, and it's refreshing to know, the outreach that this stuff has.
It's amazing. We're very lucky, and also, at the end of the day, they're guitar players, and they want what we have, the guitars.
That's right. We're like the dope dealers to these guys.
Yeah.
So, they like us or they hate us. One
But
of the
we
two.
got it, the guitars, so sorry.
But anyhow, I just want to say, Michael, thank you so much for doing this. This was by popular request. People kept saying, Lemmo, Lemmo, Lemmo. So I wanted to bring you to the people and get them to know you a little bit better, too, just talking about your past and your family and your new family here at Norm's. And I want to thank you guys for listening to our podcasts at wherever you get your podcasts. And then remember, you can see the podcast, the video of the podcast, for free at the All Guitar Network the following Tuesday. So we're doing them, and we've got a whole bunch of them in the can. I can't thank all my buddies from Vince Gill and Joe Bonamassa and Don Peake and on and on. I don't want to, Rick Vito, I don't even want to leave anybody out, but we've done a lot of them that we have in the can that we're going to be putting out for you guys. And thank you guys for your interest. And please, watch the podcast on the All Guitar Network. Again, it's free. You got a money-back guarantee because it doesn't cost you anything. So, Michael, do me a favor. Take us out with something a little different.
All right, here we go.
Michael Lemmo. Rawhide. Get 'em, Rawhide. This is before your time. That was a TV show. So
Norm's always educating me.
yeah, on the old days, the real old days. The great Michael Lemmo. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, Norm.
So folks have asked, can you kind of explain what the guitars are that are being used in the podcast? And so this guitar, Michael, that you're playing is a very early Jazzmaster guitar. The neck is dated 12 December of 58. So 58 was the first year for Jazzmasters. Tell us about what the features are on this guitar.
It's just an amazing guitar, yeah. So it was introduced, obviously, in 58, summer of 58 NAMM. So in mid-59, this would have been a tortoiseshell guard, so it really is kind of some pride to have that anodized guard, but it's just beautiful. It's got the rhythm selector. Obviously, you have your amber switch, and you got your soapbox pickups. The bar works perfectly. Just an amazing guitar, and the condition is just absolutely gorgeous.
And it's a slab neck, which means it's a thick piece of rosewood. It's the first of the rosewood necks. The fingerboards are about twice as thick as the later rosewood ones that were coming out in, say, 63, 64 and on. And they have a curved extended lamination at the end of the, just past the nut of the guitar. So that's really cool. And then what it also has that's kind of really cool is this switch up on top. When it's selector. Up in the up position, it activates these two roller knobs for volume and tone.
Yeah, and you kind of get a jazzy tone. It's almost like having the highs cut off, a little bit of a, here, let me show you. I like to do a lot of like Wes Montgomery type of stuff with it, so It's a real moody sound.
It's moody, but also, like if you were playing rhythm in that up position, and you wanted to set the volume to, say, medium volume, and then when you're ready to solo, you want the volume to boost without having to turn the volume knob. You can just
switch it.
Put the switch down, and that activates the bottom volume and tone control.
Which basically just works like a Les Paul. You got your two pickups, and then you have your neck, both, and bridge. So it's not as complicated as you think, and you can use the rhythm selector if you turn the volume all the way down. You can use it as a kill switch, all different things. But I really find that rhythm selector is super useful.
It's pretty clever wiring, actually. The Jaguar has more buttons and stuff and does a few other things.
Right.
But this is simplicity in its most prime and best form. And I can understand why people would like that, because it really sets you up to be able to do a few things very easily.
Yes.
And not have to think about too many things while you're playing, especially if you're concentrating on a rhythm passage and then all of a sudden you want to go to your solo. You just press that one button down and you're ready to go, and you don't have to mess with knobs and other stuff.
That's right.
So this is a 58. We know the neck was dated 1258. There could be some early 59 stuff there, because a lot of the times the necks and the bodies were made at a slightly different time. They shouldn't be too far off. So, but the neck is dated 1258, so I'm calling it a 58. And it's one of the very first Jazzmasters, one of the coolest Fender guitars ever made.
And the
this
best
is
I've ever played, if not.
and this is a great example of one. So there you have it. That's what we were playing.
No.